Berura, we start
right,
with the
right. You want to get grounding. What's the commentary about? Very, very good.
Bechol makom sheposek, every place that he stops. Im shah kedei ligmor ekula. If he stopped long enough to finish the whole thing, chozel lerosh. He goes to the beginning. Ve'im lav, and if not, chozel letchilat habracha sheposek vayis. He goes to the beginning of the bracha that he stopped. Ve'im pasak b'shlosha rishonot chozel lerosh. Ve'im ba'achronot chozel lerosh. If he stopped the first three, he goes to the beginning, and if he stopped in the middle of the last three, then he goes to Ritzei.
What?
To Ritzei. That's the last part of the beginning of the last third of the Shemashah. Basically, Shemona Esrei is set up in three sections. The first three brachas are brachas of praise to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Then you have the middle brachas, which are basically the requests we're making from Kadosh Baruch Hu. Then you have the last three brachas, the last third section, which is also a thanksgiving to Kadosh Baruch Hu. So we have all these three aspects of our prayers. So the first three are usually considered to be one component, and the last three also considered one component. So if a person makes a mistake or something like that, many times he has to go back to the very beginning of that component, either the first three or the last three. Okay. Let's pick up where we left off. That would be in the Mishna Berura. Yud Ches. Where do you go back? If you made an interruption, right? Where do you go back to?
Chozel Tchila. The Svirale, the Chamira Tfila Le'enya Zeh Mikrishma. It seems that Tfila,
meaning Svirale, they're of the opinion.
The opinion. That Tfila is more serious than Kriya Shema. Uficha b'Kriya Shema u'b'Kotea. Therefore, in Kriya Shema and its brachos, Sagir shehifsik sheyachzor k'mo she'asa. It's enough that wherever he stopped, he goes back to the place he stopped.
Okay, 1 second. So since the Mechaber at this point is of the opinion that Shemona Esrei is more serious than saying Kriya Shema, in the aspect if you make an interruption in it, if you make an meaning, because obviously the Mechaber, as you mentioned, the Mechaber, everyone all know Kriya Shema is the Raisa, right? So in the realm of everything, the global aspect of Kriya Shema and Tefillah, Kriya Shema is obviously much more. Like for example, let's say a person had a choice; he only has enough time to either say Kriya Shema or to say Shemona Esrei. That's it, right? What should he choose to do? Shema. Why? Because Shema is
from the Torah.
From the Torah. Right. That's apparently how it should be, right? So obviously, in the grand scale of things, Shema is much more significant. But in terms of a hefsek, in terms of making an interruption in Shema or making an interruption in Shemona Esrei, it's more serious making an interruption in Tefillah in Shemona Esrei than is making an interruption in the Kriya Shema. As we've more or less discussed before, since it's called Kriya Shema, you're supposed to read Shema. So sometimes a interruption in a reading may not be so serious.
What do you mean by an interruption?
Oh, so that we've been discussing that for the last week or so. Basically, it means by talking. Okay, moving out of your place to a certain extent is also considered to be an interruption. But as long as you don't talk, it's not the serious interruption that will cause you to go back. Okay, and the interruption in general has to be of a certain time period, and also has to be because of a certain cause. Right? So the cause, if it's of one of two types, meaning the first type, the most serious type, would be something which renders you or your environment halakhically unfit to say the words of Torah, make brachos. For example, let's say a person has to relieve himself, right? So his body becomes unfit to say words of Torah, to make a bracha. He has to relieve himself. Let's say there was a accident, a young child was in shul, or a person's at home, and one of the young children has a dirty diaper, so there's a bad smell in the room, right? So that environment becomes invalid for saying words of Torah, making brachas. So that's considered like an oinus, which is because of his body or his environment. That's the most serious type. right? And if a person interrupted in his davening, even in Shema, according to the Ramah, enough time to start and finish the entire recital of the Shema, you have to start from the beginning again. Right? By davening, it's a little bit different than with the Macabre holds that you would have to go back to the beginning if it was a hefsek. And the Mishnah Berura brings down that the Ramah would probably hold only if it's going to be that hefsek interruption because of something which is bodily or environmental. So you have different things caused. Sometimes there's a disturbance in the area. You have to move. Sometimes this is just in general a bad smell that doesn't run, but it distracts you enough that you can't concentrate. Right? So that would also be an interruption. So if you have to leave the room, so walking out because of the needs of prayer, that's not going to necessarily constitute a hefsek. As long as you don't talk. Talking is the most serious hefsek you can make.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, let's see. Again, yes, go ahead.
Ava Bekan here, Ba'inan the Tchila Bracha. He goes to the beginning of the bracha.
I mean, you don't go back to the beginning of the actual Shemona Esrei. You go back to the beginning of the bracha where you were interrupted.
Ya'ideh Shehiyah Rabba Nitkala Bracha, because he made a long stop.
The great delay.
The great delay. And the bracha was ruined.
Right, because again, as I discussed a bit last week, now is the real point the Mr. Berura makes it clear. Again, when you're davening in your Shemona Esrei, you're supposed to be oimid lefnei melech. You're asking your requests from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, if you would imagine yourself speaking to any body of power, if you would start in the middle, you would start expressing yourself and stop, right? And simply not say anything, right? Or start talking about something that has nothing to do with what you're doing and trying to accomplish by talking with him as a simple person. So aside from the embarrassment and all the strange things taking place, what you've done is really you've ruined your presentation, right? So you ruined your presentation. So in order to make that presentation valid again, you'd have to start from the very beginning of that presentation. So likewise, Abdul, when you're speaking to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, you're praying to Kadosh Baruch Hu, you're making a request from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So if you may had some interruption in your request, so in order to reset that request in its proper way, you have to begin from the beginning.
Well, if you think of it like making a presentation before, important people or an important person, you don't want to, look like you're taking it lightly or that you don't know what you're doing.
Of course not.
Because then you won't get the job.
That's right. That's right.
So people will think lightly of you and you get another.
Sure, but here we're talking about there was some interruption. These all involuntary interruptions. Something like we mentioned. Sometimes a person might start sneezing in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, right? Sometimes, as the Mechaber said, you might have a person might have a snake wrapped around his leg, yeah, in the middle of the Shemona Esrei.
It could happen.
It could happen on the fields, yeah, in the fields if a person's out on a camping trip and so.
No. But when you think, if you ever watch the news or a show, I mean, people don't, they say right in the middle of the song, oh my God, I gotta go, where? They make sure that they don't have to go, where, before they do the show.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and you never hear people, I mean, on a very short leash, they gotta do what they're doing, and they gotta do it well, otherwise their career is on the line. So
yeah.
you gotta think
Obviously. I mean, previously we had a whole simon that a person's obligated, right? A person's obligated before he starts davening to check himself to see that he's proper and he won't have to.
He's ready, that he won't
right,
have to take a break
right.
unless there's something he's not feeling well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So sometimes accidents happen, however, right?
You can say that again.
Yeah. Sometimes
Accidents happen.
persons may things might. So again, we're not Malachei Yesharis. We're not angels. We're people. We're busting it down. That's over here in Sadi Base, if you just want to refer back for a moment to Siman Sadi Base, and I'll take you back about 10 pages or so, maybe.
Is that the base?
Yeah. It's, feels, I mean, I think you have a corner of the table there, right there.
From the beginning?
Yeah, we'll just read the Mechaber just to get an idea.
Hayat Tzarech Mekabav Ali Pav, he has to go back and he shouldn't pray. They meet Pav Tfilah to Ta'eva. But if he daven, his Tfilah is a Ta'eva.
Right, so if the person has to go, it's forbidden for him to pray. And if he does go, it's a despicable,
Prayer.
undesirable prayer.
The Tzarech Lazar L'Pal, he has to go back and daven again. V'hane Mileh she'eno yachal la'ad midat moshir. That's when he can't hold himself back to walk a mile, a parsa. But if he can hold himself back to walk a shir of a parsa, he's yotze b'di'evet. But in the first place, lo yitpalu asher yidbok atzmo tchila yafed. You should not pray until he checks himself nicely.
Right, so you have to check yourself before you start davening. You have to make sure that you're fit to daven.
Haga.
Yeah.
Anybody has to use washroom. Afilu even divrei Torah. Kol shman shegufa meshukatz minak nekam. The whole time that his body is feeling it.
Right. And Ramah adds, anyone who needs to relieve himself, he's forbidden to speak even divrei Torah. Right, that's the whole time. There's gufa meshukatz min nekam. I mean, his mind is more on relieving himself than anything else. I mean, he's so the pressure there, the pains, whatever the whole situation is so overcoming him that he can't think about anything except trying to get relieve himself. Okay, now one more. Let's just do one more base. Imimsa.
In the emtzat tefillah and the or lotav, like middle davening, yeah, all of a sudden he feels like he has to go. Yami notu achig mobiliyasi. He should stay standing and finish and not stop.
Okay, so it happens. Even if he checked himself, sometimes the urge will come up in the middle of his davening. Right? Again, we're made of basar v'dam. We're blood and flesh and blood, and we're not angels. And angels don't have to worry about these things. What we eat. And as everything is supposed to work, so what goes down must come out, and we have to take care of that. That's our situation. So in the middle of its tefillah, he has the urge. He should hold himself until he finishes it, and his davening, and don't make a bracha. Don't mafsik. Don't make any interruptions.
But it happened during the bracha of Kriya Shema, he has a feeling that he wants to go. Ben Kitan Ben Goim with a small or big kore kedarko, he keeps going on. God bedavka she'eno mitavik kol kach de'it be mishum batishakzu. That he shouldn't, as long as it's not,
the urge is not so strong. Right, the urge is not so great that he's always considered to be batishakzu. That's the stage where the only thing you can think about is the urge. It's building and building and building.
But if not this, yoter tov la'aspi. It's better than if he stops.
Right.
Shura Rashbatz Kufla Pasak the Mutar. The Trumat Siman Zayin Pasak the Asur the Tzarech the Chale. The Imarts Ratza the Harchik will Hatil Mayim also, and he has to go for number one, I guess.
Right.
He should go.
Right. Okay, so that's just an example of we have to take everything into consideration. So some person is lit tefillah. Initially, he's supposed to check himself, make sure he's able to stand throughout the whole of davening without having the urge. But sometimes, inevitably, if it happens that a person does have an urge, so it depends whether he should take care of it or not. Sometimes if the urge is so great that he can't concentrate and his body is unpleasant to himself because he has to relieve himself, so he must take care of the urge. If he can control it and it's not so much pressure and it's not so distracting, so he can continue davening his Kriya Shema and his Shmon Esrei, depending on how long he can wait. He can wait 72 minutes or not. So he has to imagine, if he was on a bus between here and Tel Aviv, and now we're at the beginning of the trip, and it could easily take 72 minutes between here and Tel Aviv and Iraq, right? Without traffic, could he handle it?
Yeah.
People do it, right?
Presumably, if your body can't hold 72, your whole body can only hold 36, then you would go by that.
Yeah, you'd have to stop. If you can't hold the 72, then you have to stop and take care of it. Right. Okay, let's get back to where we are. So that was the yeah, that was in Yud Ches, correct?
Mhm.
Good.
Ava bekan ba'inan l'tchila bracha, but here he comes to the beginning of the bracha.
Yeah.
Ki al yedei.
Meaning that's where in Shmona Esrei, since you were mekalkel your bracha, right? You reset from the beginning of the bracha. In contrast, Kriya Shema, you only start up where you left off, right? Because it's just an interruption in the Kriya. So if you have to, as I said, if you have to read those Ramach words, you have those 248 words of Kriya Shema. So if you interrupt, so you just pick up from where you left, and you still have your full 248. But if you're making a request, a prayer to Kadosh Baruch Hu, if you ruin your prayer because you interrupted long enough, so then you should restart the whole presentation of the prayer again.
Ki al yedei shehiyah rabba nitkala bracha, because of the long stop, you heard bracha. Ruined the bracha.
Right, ruin the bracha.
V'davka im shehiyah haita be'emsa bracha. That's if he was in the middle of bracha. Ava ben bracha lebracha, b'di'evet lo late lam bracha. But if it was between the bracha, he doesn't have to.
It doesn't really concern us. There's nothing to it for us. I mean, there's nothing there. Between one bracha to the next, so you can understand that once the presentation of one bracha has been complete, and you're beginning and waiting to start another presentation on another bracha, so you make an interruption. So that's okay.
The kosh lo ligmor kol, as long as you stop with the intentions of that with the time it would take them to finish the whole thing. V'ayim be'biur halacha, and check in biur halacha.
Okay, so again, that's as long as you didn't make a interruption to start and finish the whole of Shmona Esrei. And if the person made an interruption to start and finish the whole of Shmona Esrei, then he has to go back to the very beginning, even if it's between bracha and bracha. Good? Okay, Yud Tet.
Bracha. So
this is a little bit complicated. The Mishna goes into a lot of details here. We'll go slowly on this.
Ayin be'chayi adam shekata to be evet im lo chazer l'tchila bracha. Look at the chayi adam that wrote that the evet if he did not go to the beginning of the bracha.
Meaning he was supposed to go back to the beginning of the bracha. He made an interruption, and he was supposed to go back to the beginning of the bracha, but he didn't. Right? He started where he left off. Whether he thought that was the halacha, whatever it was, he didn't do what he was supposed to do. He made a mistake.
Kevan shehishlim bracha, since he finished the bracha, and a rasha lachsa, then he shouldn't go back.
Also, according to the first opinion of the Chai Adam, right? Even though you were supposed to go back, but you didn't, now b'di'evid, after the fact, once you finished your bracha, right? You cannot go back and say that bracha again. Okay?
Magin Giborim Cholek argues. Legamr Cholek Legamr argues completely al din HaShulchan Aruch and the Shulchan Aruch. The kata de meikar hadin im lo sha ligmar et kula lo chashiv hefsek ve'eno chozer rak l'makom shepasa. That if he did not stop for enough time for him to be able to finish the whole thing, then all he does is goes back to the bracha that he stopped for. And
okay, one second. Okay, so now the Magen Giborim is arguing on the whole halacha of the Shulchan Aruch, and he's writing that really, according to the letter of the law, right, as long as you don't goymer for the whole of the Shmona Esrei, right, that the lay wasn't the whole from the beginning to the end, that's not considered it's not considered a hefsek at all, right? Meaning anything less than finishing the whole of Shmona Esrei from start to finish, anything less than that of a delay, that's not considered a hefsek, right? So therefore, he holds that in that case where you never go back to the beginning of the bracha, right? You only go back to the place where you started.
That time period to finish the whole Shemona Esrei, that's individual?
Yeah, it depends on how, let's say your Shemona Esrei takes 8 minutes and mine takes 10, right? So I go by 10 minutes, you go by 8 minutes. Same thing with Krishma. If your Krishma takes 3 minutes, right, so you have 3 minutes. If mine takes 2.5, I go by 2.5. Yeah. Yeah, so again, let's just try and get the Magen Giborim, right? He's arguing on the whole halakha of the Shulchan Aruch, and he says, Mikra Din, the only time, right, meaning as if it hasn't been the complete fatal interruption from the beginning to end, you only go back to the bracha you apostle, in the middle of where you left off.
Yeah, what's considered the longer interruption, and where you have to go back to the beginning?
Meaning, let's say if your Shemona Esrei takes 8 minutes, you made an interruption of 8 minutes plus.
Oh.
What's according to you?
So in that, then you have to go back and do the whole thing over again.
Right.
So the issue, the Magen Giborim is only arguing about the second part of the
Apparently, right, because
he said if you didn't wait long enough to complete the whole thing, he said you continue from where you stopped, it's going back, just as opposed to going back to the beginning
right.
of the bracha.
I imagine even in the first 3, even in the last 3, anything less than a complete, absolute, total
You continue from where you
delay,
stopped.
wherever you stop, you
Fine.
pick up.
Okay, gotcha.
Apparently, that's apparently what the Magen
Both
Giborim is.
Shema and Shemona Esrei.
At this point, we're just referring to
Shemona Esrei.
Shemona Esrei. Right. Shema is different. Shema in general, you only go back to where you left off anyway. Right. Except if it was a complete, absolute, complete delay.
The Choshet Chila Bracha, and even though the Tosafot wrote, they go to the beginning of the Bracha. Mari B'Shah Ligmor Kula. It's that he stopped the amount of time to finish all of it. The Svira Luhula Tosefta, the Ones, and the Tosefta is holding that it was an Ones mistake. But Lo Chashiv Ones Gam B'Tfilah, and he does, and the Ones does not Chashiv is not important.
Not considered.
Not considered. Also in Tefillah.
Right. Now, okay. So again, we have to go slowly here. That what it's written in the Toisus. Choyzot Techilas Bracha. So the question is, this is going on the Magen Giborim. The Gemara says you never go back to the beginning of the bracha, except you always go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei. There's never going back to the beginning of bracha. So what does Tosus mean? What do you mean? What does Tosus mean by saying you go back to the beginning of the bracha?
Because also said before, you never do that, you go back to the beginning. So now he's
Right, there's only, according to Magen Giborim, you only go back to the beginning. There's no going back to the beginning of the bracha. But Tosus mentions you go back to the beginning of the bracha. So what does Tosus mean? How would the Magen Giborim understand what Tosus means that you have to be closer to the beginning of the bracha? Right? Mairi, what does that mean? Mairi Shiyeh the Gmor Kula. That means that you delayed enough to finish the whole thing. What is that? Meaning the whole of Shemona Esrei or the whole of that bracha? I don't know. It's not clear to me. Right? Ma'iri shahayi ligmor kulo. V'svor lehu da toisus onis zeh lo chashav onis gam b'tfila. And he's of the opinion that according to Tosus, this onis is not considered an onis also in tefillah.
Review Agra, Maskim the Shita Tarashba, Hamuva Bet Yosef, and the Agra brings down the according to the Rashba that he brings the Bet Yosef, Ein Sham, Mashma. It's understood. Shmashma the Chol Gavne Ezno Chozer Glak Lo Tamachu. That in now most all cases you don't go until you go back to the same place you Pasuk Bilva, that the place that he stopped only. Im lo shali makula, if he didn't stop enough to finish all of it. Machman ones, and because he was owned by mistake. That's chozer l'rosh tefillah. What does it mean, machmas ones chozer l'rosh tefillah?
Okay, because, again, it has to be because of an oinus, okay? Two conditions, right? Two conditions you have to have, right? The interruption, the delay was that length that it would be to start and finish entirely, and it had to be an interruption because of an oinus. So you have these two conditions, right? In that case, then you go back to the Rosh Tefillah, you go back to the very beginning of Shmon Esrei, right? Anything less than that, right? You're never going to go back to the beginning of Shmon Esrei.
This is what you said before.
Basically.
So if it's not onus, does that qualify as less according to
Oh,
what
so,
you said?
yeah, because let's say a guy gets a telephone.
Right?
Telephone, the
So-
telephone rings, he's been Rafenu, and he just starts ringing, he gets the Star Spangled Banner going off in the middle of Beit
So
Knesset.
if he answers it,
Can never happen.
then what does he do?
What should he do in that case? Where
Let's
he-
say he answers it and he talks for the rest of the time.
So he should start from, according to Mr. Brewer, apparently you should start from the beginning of the bracha you left off.
So
And you go
Shmona
back to Rafenu.
is more machmer than Krishna.
In certain respects, not in all respects, in certain respects, correct.
In all respects is more machmer, if you stop in the middle.
Yes.
And Krishna stop in the middle, you just have to go back where
Pick up where, previous one, you pick up where you left off.
Mhm.
In Shmon Esrei, in certain cases, you'll have to go back and start at least from the beginning of that bracha.
But if he talked for more than a time,
Then he'd have to start from the very beginning. If
even
he
though
took
it's
it-
not onus.
If it's not an oinus, if he interrupted not because of an oinus,
Rishma didn't make a difference whether it was or not.
no.
He said it was just a period of time.
Yeah. According to the Mechaber, especially any hefsek. According to the Mechaber, any hefsek you would make, right, in Shmon Esrei, whether it's onus or not, right? If it was Kedei Ligmor Skula, you have to go back to the beginning.
So I'm trying to understand your statement about onus, and then you said if it's less, then it's different.
Right.
So
Less than time. Less than
less in time,
time.
but not less in onus.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as
Yeah,
less in onus.
it's a little bit strange because you would think if the person talked B'mezi, and it wasn't B'mezi, they got a phone call, and B'mezi starts talking in the middle of the Shmon Esrei. You would think that that certainly ruins the whole thing, but apparently not. Only oinus, the only discussion is here about oinus. Right? So the onus is usually understood to be something which is beyond your control, a compelling involuntary situation.
Right.
So answering the phone or telephone is not a compelling involuntary situation. Right? So the halakha is only written in this context that it's involuntary, it's compelling. Right? We really haven't had anything if a person spoke out amazing. Let's say saw a good old friend, he's dominating the koso. So a good old friend, he hadn't seen him since high school, 60 years ago. And he just can't control himself. He says, "Oh, Fred, how you doing? I haven't seen you all the time. Tell me what you've been up to." Forgets all about that he was down in Shmon Esrei. So it's supposed to happen then. Right? We did it amazing. I don't know. We haven't really discussed. I haven't had any discussion of that. So I'm really not sure what the whole of that case is.
Let me ask you a specific case. You forgot to turn your phone off before you started davening.
Good.
You're in the middle of Shmona Esrei.
Right.
Your phone starts ringing.
Right.
It's annoying the people around you.
Of course.
So you want to just take the phone out and turn it off.
Okay.
You didn't talk,
Right.
but you did interrupt
Right.
for, let's say, 5 seconds.
Right.
What would you do
Right.
then?
So
Continue or go back to the
Well,
bracha?
since you didn't, first of all, since you didn't talk, and since it's disturbing other people and it's also disturbing yourself, it's something which is needed for tefillah, right? Even though you shouldn't have done it, it should have been turned off before you came in. But nevertheless, it's similar to the case that Mr. Brooks first started talking about in the very beginning about a child. You have a child that's disturbing the father and other people in davening as well. So the father can motion to the child to try and soothe him, right? And try and soothe him. And so that's from so turning off the telephone would be no different than I imagine soothing a child who's crying or disturbing.
So what would you do in that case? Just
Just
continue?
continue where you left off. Continue where you left off. Yeah, I think. Pass me the newsletter. I think that's part of what I wrote up this past week. take a look. Just to make sure. Yeah, you just worry about the child, sure. Yeah, okay, so, right, so in general, you're not gonna go back to the beginning of the whole Shemona Esrei, just to make a short summary. In general, you're not gonna go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei unless it was a interruption, entire, absolute delay from the, that would take the time to say beginning to the end. If you make an interruption in a particular bracha, so apparently the Mishna Berura is learning that you go back to the beginning of that bracha, right? If you finish that bracha, which you shouldn't have done, then you just continue on. Okay, we have two more short Mishna Beruras. Let's say Chaf and Chaf Aleph, if possible. The Gimel Rishonos. Go ahead.
The whole elu kivracha achat chashiva. It's like it's one. All the first three is like one bracha. Lekach afilu losha chozer rosh atfila oler ritzayim. Therefore, if he didn't stop, chozer rosh atfila oler ritzayim. Because the beginning of the tefillah was straight. Ufish ma shekatakti b'shem agra v'amagen hagiborim hu adin hacha ein tzarech lachzor rak le'oto makom shepasach. That you don't have to go back except to the place that where you stopped.
Right, so you see the Mishna Berura is reinforcing this. So again, we have 2 days. One that says if you made a hefsek in the middle of the bracha, you go back to the beginning of that bracha. But again, he's repeating it now, b'shem the goyim, right? And the Goyim that that you would only go back to the place you stopped. So apparently the Mishna Berura is coming out that the made a hefsek in the bracha, in the middle of the bracha, go simply back to that, pick up where you left off, as long as it wasn't to enough time to finish the whole
When you
bracha.
have to go back and you feel in the first 3 brachas.
Here also, you only if you would make an interruption, I think the amount to take of the whole time of the first 3 brachas. But if it's going to be any type of interruption in the middle, going to the Goyin and the Margin Growing, which the Mishna Berura seems to be leaning towards, you only pick up from where you left off. So you'd only go back to the beginning of the first 3 brachas, except if it was a complete, absolute delay of enough time to take the whole
Oh,
thing.
so that's a different opinion, but you gotta go back.
Go back. This is
If there's an interruption of less,
if it's
either
less,
less or more.
just pick up where you left, even in the last,
Oh,
or
right.
even the first 3.
Oh, well,
Pick up where you left
consistent.
off. Yeah.
Okay, you go back to the beginning. But if it's less than the time it takes you to do that bracha,
Start from, just leave up, pick up where you left off.
in the middle of the bracha.
Yeah, in the middle of the book.
So
Oh,
if you're
okay,
in
so
the first 3
there's a
brachas,
consistency.
and you make an interruption, that's longer than the time it takes to say the first 3 brachas.
Right, then you would most likely have to go back, yeah.
It's the beginning of
It
those
is,
3.
right.
And the same thing with the last 3.
Oh, then it isn't the 8 minutes, now that's another opinion.
Mhm.
If the interruption is more than it takes you to do the first 3 brachas, which is relatively, many.
It's something, that's something you have to
So
be
then you have to
careful.
go back to the beginning.
You have to be careful there. One more Mishna Berura,
Chozer l'rosh katav achayad and Chaim wrote Hainu davka k'shesiyam kvar bracha, only when he finished the bracha. Aval im hivsik emsa bracha eno chozer elo l'tfila ota bracha. But if he made the stop between brachos, then he goes to the beginning. But if he's in the middle of the bracha, he goes to the beginning of that bracha. The chol be'emsa no nikra chazara ela tikun haloshin. Because anything that's in the middle, it's not considered repeating; it's considered fixing the wording. Yes.
Okay, Mitzvah Shem. We'll continue tomorrow.